Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Today I'm with my friend.
Hi guys.
And we're going to be doing the cheap versus expensive marker challenge. How it works is one person has to draw a picture and color it in. We're just going to be using a coloring page today with expensive markers, and the other person has to use cheap markers, and then we compare them and see which ones we like better for what the price is.
Today I will be using the Magic Fly marker. It comes in about 100 pack. That's about $15. It's got a nice juicy brush right here, and it's got a skinny marker on the other side.
Okay, I'm going to be using, I'm pretty sure this is how you pronounce it, Ohuhu markers, and I have 100 pack right here and it was about $60. So these have a nice bullet nib, but you can buy them with brush tips, but the bullet nibs are the only ones I have. And then on the other side, they have a chisel tip, which is kind of like how you'd see on a highlighter. So let's get started. I'm going to be starting off by putting the base color on the shell. So first I'm going to test this out a little bit, and that looks like the color I want. So I'm just going to go over.
And you can use any side of the marker you would like.
Yeah, I'm using the chisel tip because it will fill in more space faster, and sometimes they blend nicer.
I'm using the brush side. I just like that side a lot.
It helps cover in space really fast. And you want, if you're doing it how I am and going over it at an angle like that, sometimes if it looks all choppy and liney, you might want to go over it in the other direction. So we're just going to color the whole shell in.
And you do not have to use our exact color. You can use,
if you're trying to follow along with it as a tutorial.
Yeah, you don't have to use the same kind of markers.
If you do want to, I am using number 59, or yeah, 59.
And mine is just a good hard green. I am about to finish the shell with the cheap markers.
Me too, and remember I'm using the expensive markers. Okay, I'm gonna wait to do this because I'm gonna start off with a darker one on that. So I'm gonna keep this on the side because we're gonna need it again later. Then I'm gonna go in with a little bit of a darker green, and it's going to be 47. I'm going to test it out to make sure that's the color I want. Looks like it is. So I'm going to be coloring in this part.
And I will be using a lighter green than I used the first time. It gives it a good shade. As you see on mine, it's starting to have an effect on the shell.
Yeah, it looks like a little more blotchy than how smooth this looks. That's one
default.
Yeah. And as you can see, if we flip the paper over, mine still bleeds a lot. His does not as much, but mine, the paper is still nice and intact. But if you look at his from the front, it is kind of tearing up the paper.
Just a tiny bit.
And it's I don't know if you can see that, but the top layer of the paper is kind of coming off, and it's really wet, and it doesn't look like it can hold much more. That's another nice thing about these nice markers, because they can do that.
And the skinny side on my markers are good for outlining
Your drawings.
drawings, like that you draw with pencil.
Okay, I think I'm about done with the shell. So I'm going to go in with, again, my 47 and what I used for this. And now I'm going to go in with, I'm going to be using the chisel side. And I'm going to be adding a layer of this on about half of that one.
And you can use any side, but we like the
Chisel tip,
Chisel
because I think they blend a little better, but that's just my opinion. Now I'm going to go in with the lighter color that we used for the base of this and go over it again, go over the dark part of it, and as you can see, it kind of blends it out when it dries if you go over it a few times. When it dries, it kind of has more of an effect when it looks like a smoother blend. But to get it even smoother, you just have to let it dry. I know it doesn't look very smooth right now, but when you let it dry, I think it looks really nice. Another addition you can do with these is it comes with a colorless blender, which kind of helps blend the colors together. Again, this has a chisel tip and a fine nib, and if you go over this, it drowns out the color a little bit. So as you can see, it's drowning out the color if you think you got it a little too dark in some places.
And again, you don't want to push too hard on that kind of marker either.
Yeah. And then you want to go in with the one you originally used for this, and if you go back over it, you can see you get a lot smoother blend. And you can kind of keep doing this, going over with each side, any side you want of the marker. And as you can see, then I can go back over it with this, and each time the blend gets better and better.
And if you would like to try this cheap versus expensive marker test, you can use any kind of marker. You don't have to use the kind we are using.
Okay, so now I'm gonna let him catch up on this part, and he can explain to you how he does that with the cheap markers.
So I will be grabbing a lighter marker than I used on the show, and I'm using the brush side. Probably the best side for this spot.
I'm sorry, when he's showing you, I'm gonna go ahead and do the rest of these.
And you can see it's kind of breaking through the paper already. Not too much, but
Yeah,
and that's what happened on the shell too.
And as you can still see with mine, even though it bleeds through, the paper's still really nice and has room for more layers. But his, instead of it bleeds through still, but instead of has a very weird texture
On the top. And now I'll be using a darker color than I used before on this part right here, to kind of give it a nice shade. This brush side is very nice. Very nice. Quick and efficient.
I like these chisel tips because they can cover a lot of area. Then the nice thing about the brush tips is they can spread.
And I will be using a grayish kind of color. Still using the brush side.
Then again, I've done these with just the darker color, and I'm going to go in with the base color that I used and blend it out.
And if you have these magic fly markers, they are very nice to use on these kind of pictures.
Yes,
They're also good on sketches, but probably the best for these.
sorry if you hear my chair creaking a lot. It's a very, very old chair.
To you, this right here might look a little bit black, but in my view, it is dark green. I will let him finish up the shell.
And while I'm doing that, you can even start on these with your base color, maybe a lighter color.
I'll start on the tail. And you don't want to use you might want to use maybe a lime kind of color on the tail. And after we color the tail with this lime color, I'll be going over it with a darker green. Because just a little too white on the tail. Using this marker. Okay, and then we're gonna go back to this color that I first used on this part. As you see, it gives a nice blend, but still giving a weird texture to the paper, almost
Going
like
through
it's
it.
ripping through. Don't want to add too much layers with these kind of markers.
Yeah, that's probably definitely the biggest downside to them.
Yes.
It rips up the paper. Otherwise, they're actually pretty nice markers.
Yes. I like how they both provide a skinny side and a brush tip.
How are those juicy brush tips holding up? Are they running out of ink, or do they still have plenty in them?
No, there's still plenty in them, but I just got these maybe a couple days ago. So they're still in pretty good shape. And I think I already said this, but on the brush tip, you don't want to go too hard. And still on the skinny side, you don't want to go too hard either.
This is definitely not my best drawing.
And so now while he's doing that, I will do the feet of the fish, or the turtle.
And another thing with these markers, you don't have to, but I think they blend together a lot nicer on thicker paper because this this paper is a little thin. As you can see, it bleeds through a lot. But
yeah, this is printer paper, so
if you have a sketchbook with thicker paper, as you can see, this is pretty. That's 2 pages. This is pretty thick paper, so it will not. I say it definitely blends together nicer.
yes. And with this paper, even though it's a little bit thicker, with these markers, I think it will still bleed through.
Yeah, that's the downside.
Yeah, the biggest downside
That's
with these magic fly markers.
yeah. We just got to keep going back to that because that's a big downside.
Now, when you use the skinny side, it doesn't go through as much, but that's because it is a skinny marker.
And you're not layering it.
Yeah. And you see on the skinny side, it doesn't cover much paper as fast as the brush does or the expensive markers. Oh, hoo hoo.
Sorry if we're pronouncing oh hoo hoo wrong.
And I'll be using the brush tip on these legs.
Yeah, by the way, these are the only 3 colors I've used so far. It's 59, 47, and the 0 colorless blender. So, and not so much on this drawing or this coloring page. Yeah, I just found enough the internet, they have really thick borders, but if you have a thinner border and you color right to the edge with these markers, they tend to bleed a lot because of how much alcohol is in them to make them nice and able to blend.
So good side with the Ohuhu markers is they are good blending marker, and this Magic Fly marker
doesn't blend so much.
Yeah, as you see, it kind of got a little bit too dark, and I used.
If you want to, why don't on the side you can try to blend two colors together, and then I'll try to do the same thing. So I'm gonna go in my lighter shade, and actually I'm gonna go like this.
And I'll be using. It's not a lime marker, but it's a little bit darker than lime.
Okay.
And
so
I use the brush side.
then if I go over some of that,
and I'll be using
this one.
I'll be using the gray to go over it. It's a tiny bit, gives it a good hint. Green.
Okay, so now you can kind of see how the border, you can see how a change of color. So that's why you want to go over with the base color that you started with first and drag out. And then when you let that marker dry, it gives it a really nice blend. And then if you think you did too much in an area, you can go with your colors blender, and it kind of takes out the color a little bit.
And another downside of these markers is it does not have a blending marker like the Ohuhu does.
Yes. I think for the tail, I am going to be going in with a very light green. I'm going to be using 48. So, as you can see, it's pretty light. I'm going to be going over the tail.
And you can get these Ohuhu markers at like Amazon.
Ohuhu.com and Amazon.
Yes. And these, I think, are just at Target, or I bet you could find them on Amazon and those kind of sites.
Yeah, you were saying you found yours at Target, right?
Yeah. So now for the legs, I'll be using a lime to blend in with this color.
Darker green.
Yes, and on these Magic Fly markers, it's not a big downfall, but it doesn't have the marker name on it.
Which these, it doesn't have the marker name, but they do have
The number.
the number and kind of what the color looks like, even though that one does too.
Alright, so we got this leg in.
Yeah, and again, it's really looking like the paper's really struggling. Like,
I would not.
if I do this?
Yeah.
It's like it's peeling off.
Yeah.
Like, I just went through the paper there. It's super duper weak right now.
And this paper is a little thin, but
It's just standard printer paper. So, and this is still bleeding through quite a bit, but the paper's still holding up really nicely. So I definitely do recommend these.
yeah, even though this paper is thin, this marker does bleed through a lot.
These are probably better for younger kids who don't layer their drawings. So.
And even these kind of markers are kind of young, or like for young kids.
Okay, so now oops, I forgot.
And I'll be using the same colors on this leg as I did on that leg. So the two colors are this limeish kind and this kind. And still using the brush tip.
And then again, I forgot. I'm gonna go over this in a little bit darker of a color. You can see just bottom there, and then I'm gonna go back in with the lighter color and try to drown that out a little bit. And one last thing, I think one mistake that I made on, actually it's not a mistake, it would be a lot better on thicker paper, but if you add too much of this, which it looks like I did here because I'm used to thicker paper, it will blend, it will drown out the color but not make it look completely white.
And maybe on the first layer with these Ohuhu markers, it might look a little white, but you might have to go over it again with another darker type of marker to get rid of that little white.
Kind of, yeah. So now I'm gonna be just coloring in the head.
Me as well. Well, I've got this little part right down there that I will be doing, and I think that is also part of the leg, so I'll be using the same type.
One thing I can tell about these markers that I'm not a big fan of is what they show on the cap does not do a good job, a very good job of representing how
how it shows up.
How it shows up. Which these, I'd say, oh, that one looks pretty good.
I like this lime color. Oops. And see, it's not a very, the skinny side, it's
not very
it doesn't come up too much. You kind of gotta press a little bit harder. But as I said before, this is for outlining your sketches. Not really your sketches, but like you're drawing with pencils and that
you
kind
can
of
color
stuff.
in after.
Yes. All right.
Okay, so I think we're just gonna finish up in the legs, and then we will do the heads and tell you how we do that. So yeah, as you can see, when the marker does not dry, it doesn't have a very smooth blend. So I definitely recommend if you have thicker paper, then it will turn out a lot better and smoother blends. Like, for example here, this is on thicker paper, and as you can see, the colors blended together a lot more nicely. So,
alright, I'm moving on to the face. Color the eyes in gray.
yes, again, I'm very sorry for this really old, annoying chair that keeps squeaking in the background. And again, you have to figure kind of out where the light is going. But right here, I'm not going to add too much blend on there. And I did not think it was going to be this much different from the thicker paper and the thin paper. I was very surprised how not very nicely it blended together. But I really think if you have thicker paper, it works 10 times better. You saw how much smoother the blends are than on the thin paper. And again, because of where the lighting's coming from, I'm barely gonna do it, and so I'm gonna go over with a lighter marker and blend it.
And these are not very. This Magic Fly marker is not a very good blending marker.
Definitely not. I'd say that's a lot more for younger kids, and this is a lot more professional. Again, if you want to buy these markers, don't base it off on how these drawings look, because on this thin paper, just printer paper that we printed these drawings on, the blends do not show up very good. But I'd look at other people's drawings, because this is just our only second video, our first video together, and yeah. This one, I don't really think we need to do much of this. Maybe just a little in the corner. It's going to be a very long tutorial. Very sorry about that. Okay. Now I'm going to color in the head with, I think I'm just going to use the same color, no, that's not it, same color that I used for the base of the shell. And again, I see you're struggling a lot with those markers, and it makes the lines look really streaky.
Yeah.
I really recommend those for younger kids, because they are very nice markers, but it's just when you're trying to blend them and layer them, and even coloring down fast, it makes it look all streaky. As you can see, when this dries, it looks all smooth. But see how that's super streaky, and it's just.
And you don't want to go over the streaks too much, because then, as you see what happened here, it's gonna bleed through,
this is
and then
very wet. The
texture
paper's
will
very
be
thin, and you can just poke your finger right through it. But with this, it still probably has the same strength as a regular piece of paper. After we've colored this marker on it, and I've been layering a lot. Okay. And as you see, I'm going over it this way also, because as you can see, it's going to look a lot smoother. Now, I'm going to go in with, I'm going to be using a WG5. Well, that might be a little dark, actually. I'm very sorry. That's why I always like to test my markers before I use them, but apparently I did not. I'm very sorry about that. I'm going to use a CG2 instead. And for these, this is what the fine tips are good for, is small areas.
And I don't know if you can tell on my picture, but it is starting to run out of ink.
Yeah, and you can see
The paper is coming off a little bit.
actually quite a
A
lot.
lot.
Like, if you did this and shook it off, you can see all the little paper it's going on. So, I am almost done.
And I think I'm done with my picture. As you see, it didn't blend very well, as we keep saying. These markers are not too bright for blending. And you don't want to keep going marker over marker over marker, or else it will
Definitely
through the
make it
paper.
through the paper. And with these, even if you're using normal printer paper, which I don't really recommend if you have other paper, is how much worse the blends are than if you use thicker paper. Okay, so I just got one more thing to do, which is go over it with the same color as we did there, and when it dries, turn out a lot better. I know I've said this a lot of times, but again, when you don't use thick paper, it does not blend very well. So I really recommend these markers, and those ones I'd recommend for younger kids. And I think I'm just about done. It's definitely not my best.
Mine either. I'm not a color person. I'm more of a sketch person.
But I think whoa, as you can see, when I pick up this paper, it just folds immediately.
Yeah.
So,
It's kind of got like, I don't know how to say this, but like inflates in the picture.
it curls.
Yes.
Like when it dries, it's a little bit better.
Kind of looks like there's a bubble.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think we're done. Not too happy with mine.
Mine either.
So, I think it's time. We've covered most about these markers. But I think it's time to talk about what we like and what we don't like about them.
With the Magic Fine markers, I like how it covers a lot of paper and it is efficient to finishing the picture. And the bad thing about it is it goes through the paper
And it rips it up.
and it rips it up really, really bad. And it does not blend as good as the Ohuhu markers. And these are the good and bad things about Magic Fly markers.
Yeah, I definitely would recommend those ones for kids. But with these ones, as you can see, it bleeds through quite a bit. But if you have thicker paper, again, it still bleeds, but it will not go on to the next page. So what I like about these markers is they blend very, very nicely, especially on thicker paper. And what I do not really like about these markers is how on thin paper it bleeds through so much, and the blends are not very nice.
On thin paper, but on thicker paper,
They are very nice.
It's better to use Ohuhu markers on thicker paper because it blends better.
Another thing I really like about these is how many shades they come with and how they number them and have the color that shows what the color looks like on paper. So I think that's just about it, and I definitely say expensive markers prove their point, and they are a lot better. I recommend these to everyone who likes coloring in their drawings.
More older kids or older people.
And for those,
Younger people, younger kids.
So, thanks for watching, and hopefully we come out with another video. Bye!
Bye.